Welcome to the Nuxt introduction video. Now, there's a ton of cool stuff I want to show you about Nuxt, stuff that I'm super excited about, and I'm going to show it all to you in code right now. And by the way, if you don't understand a lot of the concepts I'm going to show you in this video, that's totally fine. The point is just to give you a taste of what's possible with Nuxt. The docs are fantastic, so you can fill in the gaps later. So let's dive right in. Now, if you have NPM 5.2 or later installed, you can use something called npx to create your Nuxt app. So you can just say npx create -nuxt -app and then the name of your Nuxt app. All right, so my -nuxt -app. Or if you're using Yarn, you can say yarn create Nuxt -app. And then we can put in our project name. Okay, so for this example, we're going to say Nuxt introduction. So that's going to set up some stuff for us. And now it's going to ask us some questions. So let's leave the project name as it is, leave the project description, author name. We're going to use Yarn in this series, but you're free to use NPM if you prefer. So we've got a whole bunch of UI frameworks that you can choose from, but we're just going to choose none for now. Custom server framework, I highly recommend choosing none, even if you know one of these frameworks. I would only choose a custom server framework if you really know what you're doing. So let's go none for this video. We're going to use Axios for a demonstration later on, so I'm going to go ahead and tick that by pressing space. And we're not going to use any linting tools. We're not going to use a test framework, and the rendering mode will go SSR. However, Nuxt can handle single-page applications just as well. I'm using Visual Studio Code, so I'm going to include this jsconfig.json by pressing space and enter, and it's going to go ahead and set up our Nuxt app. So fast forwarded that. Now let's cd into Nuxt-introduction. And I'm going to copy this here, yarn dev. And now we're going to say code dot, but you can use whatever editor you like. Here's our app. Open up the console, whack that in, yarn dev. And then we're going to have a server up and running. So let's control click this and check this out. It actually shows you all of the bundle loading and the server compilation within your app, which I think is a really cool feature that they've got. Sweet. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see better. And the first thing we're going to talk about is routing in Nuxt, which is ridiculously easy. So I want you to forget about all of these folders here and just hone in on the pages folder. If we open that up and create a new file in there called about.view, then we can go ahead and whack in a template there. Maybe just throw in a div, and then we'll call this the about page. Save that. And now Nuxt will automatically handle the routing for us. I'll show you what I mean. If we open our app and then just go to /about, there we go. Our about page is already ready and set up with routing. How cool is that? So if we come into here, .nuxt, and then we jump into router.js, we can see that Nuxt has already created the router.js file for us. All right. So there we go. It's already created this /about route, which is really, really cool. Let's go ahead and create another page in here. We're going to call this blog.view. Whack in a really simple template, the exact same kind of thing as before, just to drive this idea home. Let's give it a H1 and call it about blog page. There we go. Save that. Open the browser. And now if we go to /blog, that's going to work for us. Now, what about nested routes? Well, that's also ridiculously easy. If we create a new folder in here and we call it blog, and then we create a new file in there, let's just call it, I don't know, alien.view. Create a template for that, something really simple. And then alien page, save it. And I'm also going to grab this part here, whack it inside the blog directory, and rename it to index.view. So for those of you that don't know, index is basically a way of saying, hey, if we go to the blog route, but then don't add anything afterwards, load the index page. I'll show you what I mean. If we go to /blog/alien, it's going to open the alien page. If we go /blog with nothing else afterwards, it's going to open the index page, okay? So that's something that you might not have known. Save that. Let's see if this works. Blog/alien, and there's our alien page. However, if we have nothing afterwards, it just goes to that index.view page. So that's how you do nested routes within Nuxt. And let's just jump in here. You can always jump in here to see exactly what that router.view file looks like. And if you don't know what all of this means, that's totally fine, all right? Because Nuxt is taking care of it all for you. Now, the next thing I want to show you is a really cool feature called prefetching, all right? So if we jump into index here and we scroll down, let's get rid of basically everything inside there, and we'll just keep the container. Now, one of the first things we learn is how to create a link, all right? So we're just going to create a link here that goes to /blog. So that's going to take us to the index page. So let's put in here blog index. In fact, let's do this as a list. li, and just whack that in there. And just check that that works. So now if we just go to our index page, we have a blog index, all right? So that's working, which is cool. Now let's create another one that takes us to the about page. So /about, and then we're going to put in here about page. Really simple stuff, all right? Refresh the page, and there we go. We've got a blog index and now about page. And I'm just going to wrap all of that in a div just so that they lay out one on top of the other like this. All right, so let's do that. There we go. So now they're sitting on top of each other. We can jump to the about page and we can jump to the blog page. All right, so just got to refresh that again. There we go. So those are both working. But you might have noticed that these days, when you click on a link, sometimes it takes you to the next page instantly. And I used to do this and think, how do they do that? How do they get that kind of speed? And the way it's usually done is with something called prefetching. All right, so I'm going to go Control-Shift-I to open up my console, and I'm going to jump over here to the Network tab. Now, if I refresh this page, notice that the last thing that we're fetching, the last resource, is this SSE, all right? So we've got fav icon and SSE. Okay, so remember that for now. We're going to go back into our browser and we're going to use a special component called Nuxt-link, all right? So this is kind of like a link on steroids. You're really going to love this, all right? Same with this, we'll call it Nuxt-link. And instead of saying href, we're going to say to, all right? So that's just a little change you need to make for Nuxt-link. And for those of you that are wondering, this just uses the view router API, which is why we're saying to here. So let's save that, open up our browser, refresh the page, and now check this out. This time, the last thing that we're fetching is index.js and about.js. And what Nuxt is doing is it's saying, hey, I noticed that you're using the Nuxt-link component, and what I'm going to do is I'm automatically going to fetch these pages for you, okay? So I'm automatically going to fetch them so that when you click on the link, I can just inject that page straight into the browser. All right, so check this out. If I click on that link, it's actually a whole lot faster. And in fact, I can prove it to you. So let's go back here and change to the old way of doing it. So let me just undo all of that. There we go. Come back, refresh the page. And now, if I click on here and go fast 3G to mimic a slower internet connection, and then I click on blog index, watch this. Click. See how it took a moment? Let's go back and try that with about page. Click. It takes a little moment for it to load up. But if we go back to using Nuxt-link, check this out. This is really cool. Nuxt-link. And then we change those to 2, save it, come back, refresh the page, have a look here. Now I'm going to fast forward this, but what happens is the last thing that this app is going to do is fetch those links. And there we go. We now have index.js and about.js. And even though we're on a slow connection, watch this. Click. It's instant. How cool is that? And by the way, one more thing I want to show you, which is really cool about this. If we now add a bit of padding over here, so if we say style, I'm just going to do something hacky here and say padding bottom and set that to, let's say, 3000 pixels, save it. Let's go back to normal connection here, refresh the page. And now check this out. Notice if I refresh the page, the last thing we fetch is index.js, all right? So it's getting the blog index. Now, if we scroll to the bottom of the page, it goes ahead and fetches about.js. So Nuxt is smart enough to say, I'm only going to fetch the links that are visible on the page. So if the user hasn't actually scrolled down and seen the other links, Nuxt is going to say, I'm not going to waste bandwidth here. I'm only going to fetch those links if they're visible on the page. How unbelievably cool is that? So I'll show you that one more time. Last thing it's fetching here is pages/blog/index.js, because that's what we see. All right, and I'm going to clear that. Now notice that when we scroll to the bottom of the page, we get that new request for about.js. So it is also a really fast link. How cool is that? Moving on. Now we're going to get a little bit more advanced now, but if you don't understand, just stay with me. And as you go deeper into Nuxt, things will start to make sense, okay? I promise. So one of the reasons that we use SSR, which stands for server-side rendering, all right, meaning our components are rendered on the server, is because we get some performance benefits because the front end doesn't have to do the rendering. And it also means that we get some SEO benefits that we still can't quite get from an SPA, that we can't get from a single page application. And one of the best ways to demonstrate server-side rendering in Nuxt is with one of its validation features. This is really cool. Check this out. So if we go to alien.view and we throw in some script tags, script, all right, and we're going to have to say export default. Nuxt actually gives us an extra property that we can tap into on our view components, which is called validate, all right? And basically how this works is if this function returns false, then the user will not be able to view the page. If it returns true, they can. So let's do something really basic and return false here. And now if we go to /blog/alien, we can't view that page. However, if we return true, refresh the page, it works, okay? Now, something really cool that's happening here is that this validate method is actually running on the server. So if I go console.log, validating, save that, refresh the page, and then we go to our console, notice that we've got this little helper here called Nuxt SSR, and it says validating. So anything within here is actually happening on the server, all right? And Nuxt includes this little tool to let us know what's happening on the server inside the browser. So if we come back to our editor, notice that it's actually console logging out here, all right? So on the server, save that, refresh this page, and there we go. On the server pops up over there. So that's really cool because it means that this component isn't even going to be rendered, which is super efficient. We just go through this validate function. We realize that it's not going to validate, okay? This returns false. And then Nuxt says, well, I'm not even going to bother giving you this component because validation failed. Now, here's the cool part. Validation actually happens on the front end once Nuxt has already served up your application, all right? And if you don't understand what I just said, that's totally cool. I'm going to demonstrate it. So let's change this back to validating, all right? So we're going to save that, and we're going to go to /, and let's just create a link on this page that takes us to Alien. So let's go back to index, and we're going to create another link here, and it's going to take us to blog/alien. And we'll call this alien blog page. So save that. All right, so there we go. Here's our alien blog page link. Now notice when I click on this page, it says validating, but the validation is happening on the client-side app, okay? So it's happening within the browser. However, if I refresh the page, the validation happens on the server side. Okay, so let me explain this one more time. When Nuxt first serves up your application, the validation and all of the rendering of your component happens on the Nuxt server. However, once it's done that initial load, all of the rendering will then happen on the client side, all right? And because of that, things are super efficient. Now, I didn't understand this when I first heard it, so listen to that again if you need to, or dig deeper into the docs and it will start to make more and more sense for you. Let's move on. We're going to jump into the index page, within our blog folder. And we're going to add a script here. Export default. Now, Nuxt gives us something called asyncData. And what that is that's a special function that when it's run, it's going to return a promise. And the data we get from that promise is going to mix in with our data property, okay? And I'm going to show you why that's really cool in a second. So when the server starts rendering this component, it's going to notice that it's got this asyncData property, which is going to return a promise. It's going to run that, take the data, inject it into here, and then give the user the rendered page, all right? So let's have a look at what this might look like. Remember before how I said we're going to use Axios? We can pull Axios out of here, all right, because this actually accepts the context. And within that context, we're going to have the Axios plugin, $Axios. And let's just go ahead and console.log to check that this is working. asyncData. Save that, go into /blog, and there we go. That's working. We get async data sent to us from the server side. Now, to demonstrate how this works, I want to use a dummy API. So you might have heard of this before. There's this really cool site called jasonplaceholder.typicode.com, and then we can go /posts, and this is basically a dummy post API request that we can make. All right, so we get a whole bunch of posts when we hit that endpoint. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to come down here, and then return axios.get. So we're going to make a GET request to that endpoint. And then I'll say .then, take in the response. And then just to see where we're at, let's console.log that response. Console.log response. There we go. Save that. And then we can get out of this, refresh the page. And here we go. This is the response that we received. In fact, let's pull the data out of that. Response.data. Okay, so refresh the page. And there we go. We've got all of those blog posts here. And so since this is all of our blog posts, response.data, I'm going to say return an object. So this is what's going to be mixed into our data. Posts response.data. In other words, I want you to put in here posts, and I want that to be equal to the data that I've just received here. Okay, so let's give that a go. I'm going to save it, refresh the page, and we're not actually doing anything with that data. So let's go ahead and have a look at what it looks like. So we're going to use a pre-tag here. This is a really good way, by the way, to just have a look at your data. Pre, and then just whack in there, posts, save it, and there we go. How amazing is that? How easy was it to receive all of these posts? And the cool thing here is it's all happening server side. So if I come back here and then I say console.log server side, save it, refresh the page, notice that we're fetching all of these posts from the server, which means that we can do things lightning fast. However, if we just go to /, all right, so we go back to index, and then we go to that blog page. Where is it? Here it is here. Click on there. This time, it's not happening server-side. Even though I wrote server-side as the console.log, this is actually happening on the client side, because once the application is loaded, all of the actions on our components from then on are going to happen client side, which is so cool, and it means that things are super efficient when we're using Nuxt. Now, you know what? If I control click here, yep, let's open that link. We can actually open particular posts. So notice this one has an ID of 2. I don't know how to say that. Qui est esse. If we go to /2, then it's going to open up that post for us. So we can actually turn this into a full blog app really quickly. Let's go ahead and just spit out all of these blog posts inside of a list. So then we can just say here, v-4 is equal to post in posts. Now this is going to need a key, and we've got the ID, so we can go ahead and just use that, post.id. And then we're going to use Nuxt-link, that awesome component that we were looking at before. Let's whack in the name of the post, post.title. And let's go ahead here and say 2 is equal to, and then we'll just whack in a template here and say /blog/ the ID of the post. So we can just say here post.id. Now we're going to have to create that route, and this raises a new problem here. How do we create a route to a resource where we don't actually know what the next part of the route is going to be? So this could be 14, this could be 22, this could be 84. We don't know what the post ID is going to be. So how do we use what we call wildcard routes? It's actually ridiculously simple. We can create a new file in here and say _id.view. And now what this means is the underscore says, hey, I'm going to catch any routes that aren't alien or index, and then I'm going to create a variable called ID for the end of that route. All right, so if we say _id.view, whack in a template there. There we go. Whack in a div, and then we'll just say the ID is, and then what we can do to grab that ID is say $route.params.id. Save that, and now check this out. If I go to blog and there may be one of these blog posts, there we go, the ID is 2. So what we can do now is use this ID to go ahead and actually fetch that post. So I'm just going to grab all of this with the script tag, copy it, and I'm going to whack it into this ID component here. And now what we can do is if I come up here, we can also pull out the route. And let's go ahead and console.log that so I can just show you what it looks like. And maybe just comment this out for now. Save it. Refresh the page. And there we go. This is what our route object looks like. So you can see that we can get the params from that object. So now we can say route.params.id, okay, because that's the name of the route over here. So what it's doing is it's giving us that ID parameter. Save it, refresh the page, and there we go. Notice that we're actually grabbing this parameter here. So what that means is we can now do this. Return axios.get, posts, and then we can throw in there the route ID. So let me just get rid of that, turn this into a template string. That's going to give us a little bit more flexibility over the string. $, and just paste that straight in there. All right, so we're going to hit that endpoint with the current route parameters ID. And now instead of calling this post, we can just call it post. Get rid of that, save it. Let's come up here and just whack that in a pre-tag so we can see what it actually looks like. Post, save. And there we go. How cool and easy is that? Now, if we jump back here, we can actually start playing around with this post. So let's give it a heading, H1, and then we can whack in the post title. And then let's give it a body as well. And we'll just do that. Let's do that inside a div. And we can say post.body. Get rid of that, save it. And there we go. We've basically just built out a blogging app. Obviously, you'd want to create your own API, but it's pretty awesome how easy Nuxt makes all of this for us. Moving on. We can also create layouts. So let's jump in here, create a new file, and we're going to call this blog.view. And we're going to create a really simple template here and whack inside there a div. And then what we can do is say Nuxt, and that means that this layout is going to spit out its contents right here. Okay, so at the moment, we've got this blog layout. Maybe we can just have a H1 up here saying the blog. All right, so we're going to have this heading at the top saying the blog, and then the contents will be spit out there. And in order to use this layout, it's ridiculously simple. We just jump into ID, and we create a new property here. We say layout, and we call it blog. That's it. So now we're using this blog layout here. We just have to make sure that the name of the layout matches up with what it says inside the layouts folder. And behind the scenes, Nuxt is automatically going to use it. So let's go to one of these blog posts. Try refreshing that. And there we go. It's using this layout here. Let's actually make it a bit more interesting just to show you a more real-world example. We might have a div, and let's just give it a style and say display is flex. Put another div in there, and this can hold the content. All right, so we're going to spit out the content there, and let's just add a sidebar as well. So we'll create another div here, and we're going to give this a style, and we'll say flex. I don't know, let's set that to 8. And then this one here, we can say flex and set that to 4. Actually, we want that the other way around. Set this one to 8 and this one to 4. And then I'm going to give this some height as well. So let's give it a height of 100 view height. And then let's give it a background color of orange. It's going to look ridiculous, but that's okay. So we come back here. Now we've got this side panel here. How awesome is that? We were able to create this really simple blog layout really, really quickly using the layout component. So let's quickly summarize. We talked about routing, and you can do that by simply adding view files within the pages directory. And that also supports nested routes by simply adding new folders. We can also do dynamic routes using this underscore here. And now ID is going to be a parameter that we can utilize. We talked about SSR and how if we create this validate method here, then it's going to be triggered on the server the very first time the pages load. And then from then on, it's just going to be triggered on the client side. And asyncData works the exact same way. By the way, we can also use async await here, so you don't have to use promises. I know a lot of you guys like to use async await. And we talked about how whatever's returned here is just going to mix into our data property, which is insanely cool. We also talked about layouts and how easy it is to create a layout that we can then utilize. And then we actually used that layout down here with just that little simple line of code. It's ridiculous how easy it is, isn't it? And that just about covers the basics of Nuxt. You can get really far just with the stuff that I showed you in this video. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you. There's a reason that Nuxt is so popular. There's a reason that so many developers are using this framework. People love it because it makes a lot of basic things you need to do to develop an app so much easier so that you can focus in on what's really important, which is creating awesome projects. So jump into the docs, and I hope to see you all in the Nuxt community soon. Bye for now.